So welcome to the physical culture round robin. It's not round robin, it's a bracket. Welcome to the physical culture round one of the Legends bracket. So Phil and I are going to go over what we've seen to be some obvious and some upsets. So we'll go right into it. We had round one. We had Arnold and we had Magnus Samuelsson.
Yeah.
So Samuelsson, a one-time World's Strongest Man champion and a legend within the sport, but he's against Arnold. So that wasn't too much of a surprise there. You got Arnold.
Yeah. Yeah. Brian Shaw being the next against Toomey. You know, Toomey three-time CrossFit.
Three-time CrossFit and 2016 Olympian.
Yeah.
But you're against a four-time World's Strongest Man, a three-time Arnold champion with a lot of world records. So again, not a huge surprise, but it was a number 8-9 seed matchup.
Yeah. It's supposed to be pretty even there. And then down to Phil Heath. He takes the edge over Jill. Hey, that's probably another one that's going to be tough to upset somebody like Phil Heath.
Yeah, Phil Heath, for those who don't know, is a 7-time Mr. Olympia and was also a professional wrestler against a super strong woman, and she was a legend in powerlifting and strongman. But again, you're looking at a 7-time Olympia.
Yeah, for sure. And then arguably the greatest or most legendary CrossFit athlete, you know, to date, and Rich Froning. That was always going to be a tough one for Jeff, even though, you know, you're talking about a 2-time World's Strongest Man.
Sure.
And
also a shot putter, Highland Games athlete. I mean, he was all over the board, super strength athlete. But again, you're talking about a guy who's pretty much unbeaten in the CrossFit Games for the most part.
Yeah.
And within the team, I believe he has 4 team championships as well.
Yeah, which is just, it's wild.
Yeah.
Wild for sure. And one that I think you were pretty surprised by, and the amount of just kind of back and forth we saw early, but then Poundstone, he kind of pulled away with it at the end.
Right.
With the voting.
Yeah, Poundstone, two-time Arnold champion, great ambassador for the sport, and a great guy.
Yeah.
And he edges out Lee Moran. And now Lee is the first official 1,000-pound squat. So that was one of those things in the day. It was the squat heard around the world.
Yeah.
But based upon the legendary status and in the rules of the game, he really did one big thing one time. So there wasn't that staying power.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, now we have Pocket Hercules, Niam Sernamonigu versus Donald Denny. And so for those who don't know, Donald Denny, he got beaten, and understandably, by one of the greatest Olympians of all time. So Niam, he won 3 Olympic golds, had 5 world championships, and still has the highest Sinclair coefficient, as well as 14 world records. They call him the Pocket Hercules for a reason.
I mean, pound for pound, one of, if not the strongest guy that anyone has ever seen on planet Earth.
Absolutely. But he's against a guy that competed for 50 straight years, had 11,000 competitions, created and invented and lifted and carried the Denny Stones, and was a Highland Games athlete, and really was named the greatest athlete in the world during the 1800s, the greatest strength athlete. So hard shoes to fill, but he was knocked off by Niam Sernamonigu.
Yeah.
All right, next we have Corey Everson, 6-time Miss Olympia, and against the one and only Thomas Inch. Now, Thomas Inch, a lot of people don't realize, although there's the Inch dumbbell, and he was a strength legend in that world, but he was also Professor Thomas Inch that did a lot of the first physical culture kind of mail-in programming for people. So he was one of the OGs in the sport, but he still got knocked off by Corey.
Yeah. He was also one of kind of the first guys that was there as television and film kind of became widespread. So he was one of the first early guys that had a voice.
Wow, very interesting.
So that's one where part of why his name has lasted so long as well.
Sure. Okay, we have the great lightweight Ronnie Coleman, 8-time Mr. Olympia. Who hasn't he impacted? And that was a hard one early on to go against Tom Platz.
Yeah, it's kind of two different generations, but yeah, sometimes it's just how it shakes out.
And now
anybody who picks Ronnie is going to have a tough time.
Sure, and Platz didn't have a lot of giant wins. He had a few very giant wins, but everyone knows him for his legs, and so that everlasting approach and effect he's had on a generation of people is there, but it's going to be really hard to unseat Ronnie.
Yeah, I mean, it just is what it is.
It is.
It's tough.
All right, now, Phil, I'm sorry. This is the one that
It hurts.
So Pyrrhus Demas, who was a #1 seed with 3 Olympic golds and 3 world championships in weightlifting, 5 world records, and was one of the most dominant Olympic weightlifting athletes during the 90s. Just iconic.
Yeah.
And one of Phil's favorite lifters of all time.
Yeah.
But he gets beaten by the 16 seed late entry Lou Ferrigno.
Yeah.
Now, Lou's won, I believe, 1 senior Olympia.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he doesn't have the chops as far as winning the big ones.
Yeah.
But what does he have?
Culture.
He has the culture.
He's
He
an
was the
icon.
Hulk. He's an icon. He was the Hulk. Anyone that's lifted weights has painted themselves green for Halloween, and they were doing it because they probably grew up watching Lou Ferrigno do it. So, well done, Mr. Ferrigno. You advance. I'm sorry, Phil.
Yeah. Hey man, that's why you play the game.
Okay, now we have Saxon and Bev Francis.
Yeah.
I believe Saxon moved ahead.
He did. Yeah. Saxon, one of my personal favorite all-time strongmen. Kind of been resurrected. One of his famous lifts in the last few years in the grip community with the Saxon bar.
Yes.
It's
a pinch grip.
Yeah, it's kind of a beam, like a 3x4 bar that he would literally snatch overhead.
Yeah.
But him and his brothers were legends back in the day, with the same time as Sandow.
And you had a 4-time world champion and gold medalist Bev Francis, but who's also a shot putter. So you had a female who was an absolute stud in the sport.
Yeah.
But the legendary status of Saxon knocked her out.
Yeah, and that's kind of why they were matched so closely at an 8-9.
Yeah. Yeah. So next you have Pizzeranko. This was a tough one for me because you have Pizzeranko, who was one of my favorites, who has 3 world championships and was a stunning physique.
Yeah.
I would say probably launched a ton of back pictures and guys doing a bunch of high pulls.
Oh yeah.
But really, he didn't have a lot of Olympic experience and never fully reached his potential. But he's still a legend.
Yeah, he burned hot for a real short window there, but was just so physically.
Power
impressive.
mustache, power back, power glutes.
Yeah.
But he gets knocked out by 6-time Olympia
Yeah.
winner Dorian Yates,
Probably-
the British Bulldog.
Yeah, probably not super surprising there, but still, at least from the old time cultural impact, probably
Sure.
still the right outcome there, you would think.
Right. Next, we had Hatfield moving past Herman Gorner. For those who don't know, Herman Gorner was a strong man, one of Pops's big influences. The guy was an absolute freak when it came to grip and to deadlifting, and just strong, not strong man, but strong man physicality. I believe he had a one-hand deadlift of over 700 pounds, which wasn't beaten until very, very recently. And he never weighed over 300 pounds. And just when you get a chance to look him up, he's a mountain of a man. But he got knocked out by Dr. Fred Hatfield, Dr. Squat.
Dr. Squat.
So Dr. Squat certainly has the big win and the world record, but he also has the staying power through cultural awareness.
Yeah, everyone and their mother, once you get dinged up, or you're talking about progressive overload stuff with eccentric triphasic type blocks, you're going to be doing Hatfield squats.
There you go.
And that's the guy.
So let's talk a little bit about this. This is one of your picks, Cocky versus Blaine Sumner.
Yeah. Blaine, obviously one of the most dominant guys in recent history, but you've got the old-time, world champion and great Olympian in Cocky.
Sure.
So it's kind of the cultural impact versus the guy who's put up big in recent years.
Sure.
And Blaine clearly has the chops and came out ahead on this one.
Good job, Blaine.
Yeah.
All right. This one was a little hard to figure out.
Yeah, this
is a hard first rounder.
Yeah, and man, I honestly did not see this one coming at all. 8-time, right? Olympia.
8-time Olympia winner Lee Haney.
Man.
Surprise knockout. Maybe not surprise to everyone. Surprise for me.
For me too.
Both men are amazing people, friends. But you have Mark Henry, who's not even a triple threat. He's a quadruple threat. He's a 5-tuplet threat.
Yeah.
And that he was the first Arnold Strongman winner. He was a WWE superstar. He competed in the Olympics as a weightlifter.
Yeah.
He was a power lifter, and he also has the highest super total for snatch, clean and jerk, bench, squat, and deadlift were all highest super total of all time.
Yeah.
And competed in slam dunk contest.
Yeah.
So, Lee Haney only won 8 Olympias. That's a hard one for a first rounder, but congratulations, Big Mark. You're moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then this was one that I thought when we were first setting up the bracket, I was actually really kind of interested to see how it went down with Paul versus Brad. Brad, one of the greatest deadlifters of all time.
Absolutely. I believe he's had maybe more 400 kilo deadlifts than anyone in competition. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I believe that's still accurate.
Right.
But Paul, I mean, I think there's a strong case for without Paul Anderson, where is USA weightlifting today?
Not only an Olympic gold medalist, but then soon retired out of the Olympics to create basically one of the professional strongman world of going around doing strongman feats.
Yeah.
Created a boys' home that pumped money back into the community. And I mean, without a Paul Anderson, there's not a Richard Soren. There's not people in that era growing up looking up to him. So his cultural impact was absolutely enormous.
Yeah.
And it's cool to see Paul moving on.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Louie the Godfather. I mean, that was that's why he was a 2 seed. Everybody knows Louie and his impact for sure.
Louie Simmons, and obviously we're talking about Louie and the West Side Ohio version of West Side Barbell and all that's come with that and the great lifters that have come out of there and the culture and everything. But Pudgy Stockton's no slouch. I mean, looking into her, she's the original Muscle Beach girl. She was the first sanctioned weightlifting competitor ever as a female, as well as first sanctioned physique competitor. So you talk about the cultural implications of that, and that's pretty amazing. But Louie edged her out, but it was a heck of a fight. It was actually a little bit closer than I thought.
Yeah, for sure. And then heading over to the other side of the bracket.
So now we're starting right over here.
1 versus 16. We got Big Z.
Yeah, Xavier Savickas.
And Serge Nabray, who anybody who knows pumping iron knows who Serge Nabray is. One of the great bodybuilders of all time. Probably a 16 seed because doesn't necessarily have the hardware that stacks up compared to say an Arnold or a Ronnie, whereas it's kind of odd that in any other generation he probably takes home all that hardware instead of those guys. It's just kind of unlucky.
The wrong generation.
Yeah, but Big Z, I mean.
Conversely, Big Z is taking home all of the hardware.
Yeah, he's won it all the strongmans, all
5-time world's strongest man, 8-time Arnold strongman, a ton. I mean, if you're talking about dominance, which is one of our criteria, there's probably no one in the strongman world that's ever been more dominant with world records, first place finishes, and not even in the big ones, but the European championships, the Arnold spin-offs. Yeah. The guy won everything.
Everything.
Like always. Yeah. And the craziest part, he made it look easy.
Yeah. And I know you've heard him say it, and I've heard him say it in person where, after every world record, Big Z, congrats on the log press, man. And what's he say? No, it was easy. It was easy.
Yeah. So he's a whole different animal.
And then Matt Frazier, Frank Zane. This was one, again, in 8-9 I thought was interesting because you got Frank, who's clearly a legend, but Matt, who has been so dominant in a new, in a new lane with CrossFit. 5-time
CrossFit winner versus a Hall of Famer in Frank Zane.
Yeah.
Cultural impact, but you got to look at the cultural impact that Matt Frazier's had in a new sport with today's generation.
Yeah. Frank Zane also dominant, but man, you look at the social reach of a guy like Frazier today and how many people he can touch. It's I think that's probably a big part of what helped edge him out.
Sure. Now you got John Paul Sigmarsson, and those not new to the World's Strongest Man world, they realize that John Paul was a 4-time World's Strongest Man champion, also a big-time powerlifter. He was kind of the big guy against Kaz back in the day. Yeah. Died early, hate to say, adds to the legend, but he was just a big, beautiful man that was just an amazing person. Yeah. But you're against another legend that maybe I don't think gets the chops for his hardware, was Terry Todd. So Terry Todd's obviously a legend in the historical aspect, of the strongman world, the powerlifting world, the weightlifting world. But he was the first and second national champions of powerlifting when that first started off. An absolute history buff. I mean, the history of the physical culture world kind of rode on his shoulders for years and years with the Stark Center with his life jam.
Yeah, for sure.
And unfortunately, we lost Terry a few years ago. He was a near and dear friend to us. So you have two legends that aren't with us anymore, but John Paul pulls away.
Yeah. And then Pudge. Anybody who followed strongman through the late 90s, early 2000s knows Marius and how dominant he was for that stretch there. Was
five-time world's strongest man.
Yeah, five strongmans, and then going head to head though with one of the greatest bench pressers of all time.
Yeah, I was actually there the day that he broke. I believe it was 7/11 in 1996 in Philadelphia. I was in the front row, and not only was it at a IPF, world champion, national champion. I think it was national championship event. He got up and I remember he looked at the crowd and he wanted to check his shirt, and he literally just had a white t-shirt on. He tore it off and threw it in the crowd, and he did it with basically jewelry on and a white t-shirt. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in real life lifting.
Yeah.
Absolute legend, but you're going against
the five-time world
a
champion.
super freak.
Yeah.
So good job, Pujanowski, moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, so we go into Jay Cutler and Captain Kowalski.
Yeah. Cutler, obviously, multi-time Olympia.
Yep, 4 time.
Yeah, just an icon for so many years there, and still a huge force in the bodybuilding world. But Kirk, I mean, you saw him lift in person.
Yeah, I've seen him lift in person. You talk about a guy squatting over 1,000 pounds and walking it out and dumping that sucker deep. Also, 6 world championships. I mean, you talk about dominance. Both of them had a similar dominant streak.
Yeah.
I think it just boiled down to Cutler has a bigger reach, and more people know of him.
Yeah, he's been on
potentially
all the magazine covers.
Sure,
yeah.
And so that's where that social interaction and that social push probably pushed him over the edge. But both two awesome champions, and congratulations to Cutler for moving forward.
This was honestly probably one of my favorite matchups of the whole thing: Franco versus Pat Casey. Because one of the things I know I've heard said about Pat over the years is that if he set his mind to doing a lift, he would complete the lift.
Sure.
It's one of those guys that just
first 600-pound bench presser ever.
Yeah.
What was he in the mid to late 60s?
Yeah.
I believe in Pop's Zero.
Yeah, and it was there was some crazy legend about him deciding that he was going to do some absurd amount of dips, like 800 dips or something, and he would just do it. Like, well, how'd you do it? Well, whatever he set himself out to do, he accomplished it. And I think that's part of that mentality that made him a legend. But Franco, probably the greatest, considered the lightweight bodybuilder of all time.
And 2 overall Olympias.
Yep, 2 Olympias. Obviously, finished runner-up to Arnold. When they had the 2 weight divisions a number of times. But then also at the same time was still competing as a strongman, which I think a lot of people forget.
Powerlifting and in World's Strongest Man, right? And the multiple movies that he was in obviously put his name out there, and we got to see a lot of Franco over the years.
Oh yeah.
That's very understandable how Franco moved forward.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, he's no longer with us no longer with us anymore, but certainly a legend.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Louis Cyr and John Cole. And Cole moves ahead. He's one of my favorite guys, but I also have a lot of respect for Cyr.
Yes, Louie was, kind of the first, physically larger than life type strongman, where Sandow was, people saw his physique, but Louie was just this hulk of a human who could move absurd, ungodly amounts of weight that people haven't seen before.
And still to this day, the Arnold Strongman trophy is the Cyr trophy. So that just gives you a little bit more insight to that. But he was knocked out by John Cole. And Cole, like I said, I mean, he was almost like a Mac Wilkins, like a multiple Mac. The guy was a power lifter, Olympic weightlifter, a shot putter, a discus thrower, and was at national to world level in all of it.
Really? Wow.
And just an absolute freaky athlete. If you were to make a power and strength well-rounded athlete, that's your guy. And he has legendary status. If you want to check him out, look him up. He just, something about his pictures just makes you go, okay, I wish I looked like that guy.
Yeah, which is cool because now it stacks up for the next round with Kaz moving through against Bruce.
Yeah.
And if you go by just a name, Kaz, I think it kind of speaks for itself.
Right.
I mean, they literally rewrote World's Strongest Man because the guy was such a freak.
Yeah, they kind of made him quit.
Yeah.
And they changed the rules because he was so dominant. I mean, they only kind of let him, from what I understand, win 3 World's Strongest Mans, 14 world records, powerlifting. I mean, he did some throwing, some Highland Games. He had a Highland Games world record at the weight over bar at the time. And then just, being in the strongman community, we've been around the strongest men in the world, and they always want to say hi to Kaz.
Oh, yeah.
Kaz is a legend. But you have another legend in Bruce Wilhelm, and with 2 World Strongest Man championships, also was a world-class shot putter. There was a lot of other stuff going on, but it's going to be tough to beat Kaz.
Oh, yeah, understandable for sure. And moving down to the next section here, the next number 1 seed versus the 16. I mean, Ed.
Yeah, Eddie Cohen. A lot of people say he's the GOAT of powerlifting. I couldn't disagree.
Yeah.
I think there's a few people on that boat potentially, but I've had the opportunity to see him lift in his heyday, and he was amazing. He's an awesome person.
Yeah.
6 world championship wins, known as the GOAT, against Apollon.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about Apollon.
Yeah, Apollon was one of those, again, old-time legends where part of his cultural impact is the fact that he had a lift that was so signature that now is still done in strongman competitions.
Apollon's wheels, then known as the Apollon's axle, thus thick bar training.
Yeah, and so, you talk about impact. While he didn't have the competitive track record, such an important feat of strength that for just decades and decades and decades since, everyone's wanted to try to match what he could do.
Sure. Here's one that I could see. Hafthor Bjornsson moves past Lamar Gantt, and I don't see that as being. Hafthor's a number 8 seed, but I could see him going deep into the playoffs.
Yeah.
For purely the cultural interaction.
Yeah, he's been so dominant in just raw feats of strength.
Yes.
In the past 10 years, and his rise was so quick. I remember the first few times that I saw him competing, in 10, 11, 12, and everybody's still kind of like, who is this guy?
Who's this kid?
Yeah, he was just so young, and then within 2-3 years of that, it was like they flipped the switch and
right.
Winning.
He has 2 Arnold wins. He has 1 World's Strongest Man.
Yeah, he podiumed in 6 straight Arnold or World's Strongest Man. So talk about staying power.
But here's the thing, Lamar Gantt. It would be hard to say that Lamar Gantt isn't the GOAT of powerlifting also. I'd have to be a good argument.
Yeah.
The guy was 15 times world champion.
Yeah.
Now this wasn't the same year. This was when there was 1 world championships in a year.
Yeah.
And he did it 15 years in a row.
Yeah.
He was the first person ever with a 5-time deadlift, a 5-time bodyweight deadlift. Guy was an absolute freaky stud.
Yeah.
And he rewrote the rules and everything of powerlifting.
Yeah.
But it goes to show, if enough water's been under the bridge and enough time, and there enough marketing isn't for a person, they don't make it out of round 1.
Yeah, exactly. It's again, the cultural impact is part of what plays a role there. So, and kind of going in that same vein, next matchup with Larry Pacifico going against Hooster. I mean, again, there's another case to be made. Is Larry the greatest powerlifter of all time? You can make the argument. There are people who would argue that with you.
Yes, yeah. There was 71 through about 77. He was wildly dominant. I believe 6 or 7 world championship wins, multiple national champ. I think I looked him up, and I think he only got second once in his career. Not only did he push powerlifting as the athlete, but he was also holding the powerlifting competitions and really getting people excited about powerlifting. So the long-term implications of that is huge, but he wasn't able to unseat Mark Hooster.
Yeah, who is a more recent athlete, but I look at him similar to a Surgeon Ray, where if you put Hooster into a different generation, he's remembered as one of the most dominant lifters of all time. You just happen to be born at the same time as Pierrot. it's tough luck,
Right.
man. You know,
Strangely enough, Houston roots for Pyrrhus doesn't.
yeah, it's wild, right? Figure that one out. And another kind of old school versus new school matchup with Pizzeranko and then Ray Williams.
There's a good matchup, honestly.
Yeah, it was interesting because I thought kind of going into it it'd be a bit of a coin flip. Honestly, because Pizzeranko, you're looking at a guy who set what was an unbroken world record until they literally just retired the record because they got rid of his weight.
266 kilo clean jerk. It's amazing. He was a huge champion, but now we have Ray Williams, who is still on the way up. We're all squat aficionado and just an absolute beast there.
Yeah.
Too.
If you're keeping tallies of your 1,000-pound squats,
yeah,
you're doing some impressive things.
So congratulations, Ray. Moving on.
Yeah.
Now we have the other Todd. So I think this is the only husband-wife team that's made the top 64.
Yeah.
So you have Jan Todd. She was the first female in the IPF Hall of Fame. She was the yin to the yang in the strength history world with Terry. Strong woman, was seen as the strongest woman in the world for many years.
Strongest woman in the
Tons
world.
of world records in powerlifting. An awesome person, like family to us, and just lives, eats, breathes, and bleeds the strength world.
Yeah. So, and I think that's part of why you see her in that position as a high seed, even though she, again, going against Tommy Kono, who anyone who knows American weightlifting, he is.
That's a hard one. You're right.
Yeah,
because
he's the last American Olympic gold medalist. 2
Olympic gold medals in 2 separate Olympics, weightlifting, and 4-time Mr. Olympia. Do that double sometime.
Yeah, figure that one out.
Yeah, figure that one out. Tommy Kono, unbelievable. Not with us anymore either. I had a chance to meet him. Quite an honor, but man, what an absolute icon of the physical culture community. Not only was he functionally strong, but he looked good enough to win an Olympic.
Yeah, go watch some of those old Tommy Kono videos. It's absolute just raw muscle.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then
probably the upset of the competition.
Yeah. Because honestly, it's one of those where Sandow easily could have, should have, do the arguments, been a 1 seed.
He could have been in the final round.
Yeah, I mean, he should have been. If we had just given him a bye into the final, I don't think anyone would have argued with us.
Right.
But he gets knocked out.
Gets knocked out by Thorsgardottir, who's a 2-time CrossFit champion, legend in the sport. Yeah. But I would say people need to go learn a little bit more about Sandow. The actual bodybuilding Mr. Olympia trophy is the Sandow trophy. And he was one of the first people ever videoed with motion picture to even show that it was a possibility that it could be done. And because he was so aesthetically pleasing, they knew people would watch, that would sell the idea of motion picture.
Yeah, of film.
Of film.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking a champion lifter literally coined the term physical culture.
Yeah. Yep, set up his own training hall that was called the Sandow Institute of Physical Culture, where he taught people the importance of fitness and training and diet and all that. And so, does he seed all of this in some way, shape, or form? Probably.
Probably every person on this list is there because of Sandow.
Yeah.
That's arguable.
Yeah. So he gets knocked out though.
But unfortunately, Mr. Sandow, you're relieved.
You're going home.
All right. Okay, now we have
Magnus.
Magnus for Magnuson, 3-time World's Strongest Man. If you were about my age, growing up in college, watching World's Strongest Man competitions, you got to watch a lot of Magnus for Magnuson.
Yeah, and I think that's part of why you see him as being remembered as such a legend, is that, again, the visibility of it.
He was 286 pounds.
Yep.
He was beating all the big guys. He
Yep.
kind of the first that had that, he could hang with them strength-wise, but he had the stamina and the movement ability.
Oh, he was an athlete.
He was an athlete, and he changed the game.
Yeah, for sure. And everybody, my age, that grew up in the 80s and 90s watching on the weekends on ESPN, World's Strongest Man, you knew who Magnus was.
Magnus Spur.
Yeah.
And he edges out Mr. Andy Bolton, who
Yep.
was the first to deadlift 1,000 pounds. And I remember talking with my dad, and Dad said when he did it, he goes, "Wow, that was something I always hoped I would see in my lifetime, someone deadlift 1,000 pounds on a regular bar, grab the bar, both hands,
Half a
stand
ton.
up. Half a ton."
Yeah.
Absolutely amazing, Mr. Bolton, but you're not moving on. So
Yeah.
Magnus Ferrer moves on.
Yeah, and the last one I'd say probably the second biggest shock behind
Have to agree.
Sandow, Alexiev.
That one makes my head hurt as well.
Yeah, I love Liu Xiaoxun. I really do. I mean, the guy's a freak. He's one of probably my favorite lifters to have watched in the last 10 years.
So let's give him a little props. He has 11 world records, or has set 11 world records, and actually has 2 current world records
Yes.
in weightlifting. 1 Olympic gold,
Yes.
but
Alexiev. 82?
82.
82 world records. The guy was a machine.
An absolute machine. First 500-pound clean and jerk in Columbus, Ohio. I believe Arnold was there in attendance, which is one of the reasons why Arnold actually does a lot of the stuff in Columbus, Ohio, because they felt that they could promote that better there.
Yeah.
He was known as the athlete, not the strength athlete, but the athlete of the 20th century. And at the time, he was the most recognizable athlete on the planet, and that includes when Cassius Clay or Muhammad Ali was on the scene as well.
Yeah.
So you're talking a man that absolutely rewrote the strength game and
Yeah.
put it into physical culture.
Yeah. And I believe Pizzeranko was the guy who broke his clean and jerk world record.
Yeah, because he clean and jerks 566.
Yeah.
So not only did he hit the 500, but he worked it on up.
Yeah. And he also did an over 500 clean and press.
507, I believe.
Yeah. Which, if you haven't seen the Olympic press, go watch that video.
With a 419 or 417 snatch as well. So you're talking, this is in the 70s. An absolute legend in the sport. I mean, if you remember watching the Man Show, there was literally a picture of him in the background cleaning that 500.
Yeah, there's few people who have, again, like you said, rewritten what people thought was possible for weightlifters.
Sure.
The way he did. But
he is going home.
he is going home.
So guys, I hope you've enjoyed our round 1 comments. We've had a couple questions ourselves. We really appreciate you guys interacting with this. Tell us who you guys wish you would have seen on here. Someone that you think might be ready for it in 10 years, a legend in the making perhaps. And let's hear with the people who are still left, who do you think is going to go to the next level, and who do you think that number 1 person is going to be?
Arnold.
Good chance. Thanks guys.